Hi guys, today is the 20th of May 2020. It's 32 minutes past 9 in the evening over here in the UK. And I was watching the news and they were talking about the coronavirus, of course, because that's all they ever talk about these days, 24/7, back to back, reminding us of how many deaths there are or how many deaths they want us to believe there are. Obviously, I choose those words very carefully. But aside from whether the virus is real, whether the deaths are real, um, the origin of the virus has always been blamed on China, and obviously that started with Donald Trump really going after China in terms of pointing the finger at them for the ones being responsible for allowing this virus to take over the world. But my theory is it started in Italy. The reason I think that connects with this scene here, we have the boy in the Catholic dress, so obviously that gives you a connection to Italy. We've got other Italian references in the beginning of this video. Next to the boy is all the medication, and he looks rather sick. And accompanied with the fact that when the camera zooms in, we get the close-up of the eyes or the iris, which also known as corona. So we have a potential corona iris, which could be translated into coronavirus situation just there. I feel that the virus, if real, started in Italy and was then transferred to China, and from there, wherever. I say this because I just have a feeling that that's the case. And when I look at the news, and I'm reminded that Italy, specifically the Lombardy province, was at the center of the outbreak when it first kind of came to the forefront of the news. And I was just wondering why, if the virus is from China, why are there more infections in Italy than there is in South Korea or in Taiwan or in any of the countries, counties, provinces that surround China? Why is it Italy that has the biggest outbreak after Wuhan? So I just had to think to myself, maybe this is something else that was planned, and obviously they're trying to put the blame on another country, similar to another 9/11 tactic. You cause a lot of death. It doesn't have to be an instant one-off event. Obviously this is an ongoing thing, but it's causing a lot of death and could be equated to a 9/11 event if it's a false flag meant to start war or start problems with another country or another region of the world. China has obviously been very aggressive in saying that they are not responsible for the virus, and I kind of feel for them, because if it is the case that the virus didn't come from there, but they were just the first to report it, then it kind of puts them in that firing line for being blamed. What do you do if a virus has been circulating around Europe, for example, for a number of months? Um, the earliest reports I can get of coronavirus is circulating in Europe, not China, and that was around October of 2019. So, yeah, what happens in that case? You've got the virus circulating for months, and then no one in any of these European countries is reporting it, but then it gets to China, and suddenly the Chinese are like, okay, we need to alert the world, or not even the Chinese government, because they, just like the rest of the governments, were intent on keeping it quiet. But one doctor managed to speak out. Obviously he's dead now, but he managed to speak out and warn the world about what's going on, and because of that, China is seen as the ground zero for this virus. But as I say, I suspect that it's actually in Italy. Italy has one BSL 4 lab, that's a biosafety level 4 lab, which can research, manufacture infectious diseases. I found it interesting that they only have one, whereas many countries have multiple labs. So it's kind of easier to focus on just that one. Um, it is the Italian National Reference Center for Ebola patients. So it's got a heavy concentration on Ebola. That was the last major outbreak before SARS. that occurred before this particular virus, COVID-19. And I find that the person that they named the institute after, Lazzaro Spallanzani, forgive the poor pronunciation, has quite an interesting past in terms of what he was researching or what he was known for. So Lazzaro Spallanzani was an Italian Catholic priest, also a biologist and physiologist. I think that's physiologist, who made important contributions to experimental study of bodily functions, animal reproduction, and animal echolocation. The animal echolocation stood out to me not just because it's a hyperlink, but because it reminded me of bats, of course. And one of his areas of study was finding out how bats fly with no light. At the time, they didn't know about the echolocation feature that bats have, and he conducted a number of really gruesome experiments, including deafening and blinding bats to find out how they navigate in the darkness. And when I thought of that, I thought, well, most people are saying that coronavirus comes from bats. And it's also interesting, I find, that he was responsible for kind of a lot of the research a lot of the early research into bacteria and viruses. So he discovered that viruses or microbes could be killed by boiling, an hour of boiling, as the microbes did not reappear as long as the material was hermetically sealed. So you could seal something after boiling it, and the microbes, bacteria, or viruses wouldn't be able to regenerate. He proposed that microbes move through the air and that they could be killed through boiling. Obviously, I already said that, but it's repeated twice. So I find it interesting, those two things, microbes and bacterias, and bats, echolocation and stuff like that. And if you consider the institute that is named after the guy could have access to, records and stuff like that, or even themselves be involved in generating or researching bat microbes or bat viruses, for example. And then, before you know it, we've got a worldwide pandemic, which I say may because I have no proof, it's all supposition, that this virus started in Italy rather than in China. And what is going to happen after all the blame game has been played, will be led into a situation where there is conflict on the Asian continent. As we can see here, I've theorized before that all these jutting rocks remind me and remind a lot of people of a rib cage, in which case the tanks would be traveling down the spinal column. So it may have that same kind of connection to a virus, and then we're linked over to Asia, and we've got the Chinese Tiananmen Square scenario going on with protesters or someone representing, I believe, a country like South Korea coming out to say, no, peace, we don't want war. At the end of the day, I hope none of this happens, and I pray none of this happens, but considering some of the things we've talked about have happened, or have partially happened, or have been linked in some way to an interpretation that we may have done, I'm not gonna, just close my eyes and say it's a cartoon and nothing's gonna happen like this. As I say, I'm not sure how helpful the information would be in terms of where the virus started, for us anyway, but I feel like it's important to keep our minds open and not just go with what we're being told. It's very Iraq has weapons of mass destruction with this the virus came from China talk. So when I hear things being forced into my brain like that, I pause, stop, and think, why are you trying to make me believe that it came from this certain place, or it started in this certain way? Is there any other potential explanations? And I find that yes, there is. You know, they say that the virus went to Italy after China because there's a lot of commerce between the two countries, especially between Milan and Beijing. However, it could just be that the virus started in Italy, went to China, got reported from China, and then everyone's blaming China for it coming from there because they were the first to report it, rather than thinking, well, actually, the other major center of outbreak was in Italy very, very early on. So why was that? But I don't think they really care. But I do, and I hope you guys do too as well, because the truth is important, and the truth, even in this day and age, still matters. You guys have a good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and may the Heavenly Father bless you.